Well, greetings, everyone, and welcome to An Imperfect Union, presented to you by the political consciousness of West Coast Steeler fan. Um, I sent out a few invitations. I'm hoping a few people will join us tonight, as usual. Dr. Casey, Miss Sims, as well as Mr. Scott. Um, Brother Williams will not be joining us tonight, as out here in California, we have a situation in a suburb of San Diego uh, known as Lakeview. And I'll just read a quick excerpt here from right now. There's a protest going on at the lakeside, excuse me, out in Lakeside, and I'll just read a little bit of this to you. San Diego sheriff deflects complaints after alleged white power gang member stabs black teenager. On April 16th, Lakeside experienced its first recorded hate crime of the year. Two white youths stabbed and beat a 16-year-old black girl while using racial and misogynistic slurs against the victim. A lieutenant with the San Diego Sheriff's Department Lakeside substation fielded the majority of the questions and comments during the town hall on the attack. Attendees shared personal experiences with racism in Lakeside and condemned the Sheriff's Department for what they characterized as interaction. Then it goes on to describe the actions of May 16th and what transpired out here. The young lady, I'll just read just a little bit. The sheriff's investigation determined the 16-year-old male suspect and a group of teenagers approached the victim and her family about an assault that happened earlier in the day and began yelling racial slurs at them. Williamson told the the LCRW, that the relationship between the victim and the perpetrator goes back much further. The two families live in the same apartment complex for some time. The family of the victim had made complaints of racist harassment to the property management firm in charge of their complex several times over the past 4 years. So we are definitely having a protest here in, as I said, Lakeview. Brother Williams and the Black Panther Party are making their presence known, as well as some of the other residents of Lakeside, even though this is a white supremacist stronghold. As you know, we do have minorities well represented. I see Mr. Scott and Dr. Casey is in. Dr. Casey, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing pretty good in yourself.
I'm doing good, doing well, doing well. As I always say, another day above ground is always a good day. Uh,
Yep.
Mr. Scott, how are you doing this evening?
Doing very good. Doing very good. We had a huge birthday party yesterday for my father-in-law, his 100th
Yay.
birthday. I mean, he's a commander of the Black Johnny Baker Post. I mean, relatives came California, Vegas. They all came up for this thing. And you talk about food. Oh my goodness. Woo! They had some red beans and rice and green beans.
All right, now don't make us hungry now.
Woo!
see,
Man,
see,
I
see.
went home and I just woke up from behind all that. It was so good. So yeah, it was
You had
very.
that itis.
Yeah,
uh,
so yeah, I'm glad to join you all. I don't know, is Miss Sims, is she on now or?
Miss, I sent her all the links. I'm hoping that she'll be in soon. And
Oh well, then I can make this stay. I can ask Dr. Casey, what are you wearing, Dr. Casey?
Oh my
see,
God.
see, see.
We'll start early. I have on a sweater. It's buttoned all the way up.
uh,
Okay,
It's buttoned all the way up to the top.
uh, Dr. Casey, we might have to get a jab for you, whether you're a Muslim or not, with Mr. K. You know, uh, man, I mean,
I apologize.
Oh
I
no, you
apologize.
Mr. Scott, is your wife your girlfriend and all? I mean, I know you got to be in a different. I know you, I know you got to be in a different. I've had a lot of experience with black women. I know you got to be in a different room. You, so,
Yeah, yes, I'm
oh,
by
man.
myself right now.
Don't. I don't want to turn this into a Will Smith incident
hey,
from the other side. Now,
No,
uh, um,
that's
Mr.
why
Scott.
it's so funny because when people in relationships that try to be flirtatious flirt with me, I have this thing that I do, especially on social media, is instead of flirting with them, if they're married or in a relationship, I find their wife and make their wife like me, and then I make them both look stupid because why are y'all even bothering me?
that's very devious. I better tread lightly here.
You better, you better. I'm just playing. I wouldn't say
Oh man, but there are. I was just speaking about the incident that happened out here in a San Diego suburb on the 16th of April, where a young lady, 16-year-old, was attacked by three members of a supposedly alleged white supremacist gang, and the Black Panthers are making their presence known at a protest this evening, started at 6 p.m. Same time as the show. So Brother Williams will not be with us tonight, but you know, I don't just pick on your town there, Mr. Scott. We have a lot of our own problems here, and they go way back. Whether it be with the Latino community or the southern border. Since I'm only 12 miles away, we have to hear all of that. But so just kind of keeping things on the real here. But my first topic was actually inspired by your show Saturday, Mr. Scott. Um, I was listening to the young man, the Republican. I believe he's the Republican candidate for your district, District 5, Mr. Uh, Cole, I believe
Royce
it is.
White. Royce White.
Royce White? Okay. Um, but I have a couple things before we get to him. I have a couple things that I'd like to just kind of go over here for a minute. A couple statements that were made by members of the Republican Party in particular. And I'm going to start out with Mr. Tim Scott. Uh, let's see, where am I here? Uh, I think this was it, where he says America is not a racist country. And
I
then
actually did. I did an
excuse,
episode about this.
well, let me go on. Now, also on the 29th of November 2021, Miss Winsome Sears, she's the Republican lieutenant governor of Virginia, and she says, why are we voting the way that we vote? Why are policies that we truly believe in, because you know that the black population and or the minority populations were generally conservatives. So why Why don't they just vote that way? And then we have your favorite here, Mr. Scott, Mr. Herschel Walker. Herschel Walker says Senator Lewis was one of the greatest senators that's ever been, and for American Afro Americans, that was absolutely incredible. To throw his name on a bill, and we're talking about the John Lewis voting rights bill here, for voting rights, he thinks is a shame. First of all, when you look at the bill, it just doesn't look like something that John Lewis would have stood for. Uh, we say that our black news is independent, Mr. Scott, but do you think that black Republicans reflect what black voters really have concerns for?
Well, as far as Herschel Walker, I'm going to defer to my colleague, Dr. Casey. She's in Atlanta. She's in Georgia. And I will defer my time to Dr. Casey on the Herschel Walker debacle.
Thank you for giving me your time. So, what I feel about politicians largely um, covers Black Republicans is that they don't really um, speak for Black people in general. I mean, I think that a lot of times they have great intentions when they run for office and before they get in office, but the reality of what you can do in office differs a little bit more than what people really realize and can account for. So I don't think that they speak for the best interests. I think the whole system is not in the best interest. I mean, they're fighting two sides of the same thing, and they can never come to a place to where it actually helps Black people in real time, in real life, in a real way. And that is the saddest part of living in this time with this democracy, quote unquote. But based on what just came out about the Republicans that helped the coup, um, if they don't do something about just that, if they don't handle that in a certain way, I think that it's going to really show a lot about our system.
Do you
Well,
believe that? Do you
Dr.
believe?
Casey, I want to make a couple of statements right here. Dr. Casey, I think you're being very evasive. I think you're being very because we were asking about Herschel Walker and your
No,
thoughts on
no.
that was.
No,
And I think you're being
his
very
it
evasive.
was about
I think you
Her,
Black politicians or Black
Herschel Walker
Republicans
was
in
an
general.
example. I, I,
Mhm,
I could
mhm.
I could just as well go with Tim Scott saying that America is not a
Now,
racist
now,
country.
now, I did a whole episode about America not being racist. So technically, if we're gonna be technical, America, the land of America, is not racist. The United States, the country, the business entity that runs the land, the system is built on racism. So I think that even when I hear make America great again, it didn't say make the United States great again. America is the land in which Christopher Columbus came and ruined. So when you talk about making America great, then that means getting the understanding about indigenous people, about the people that were called Negroes and colored, although they were native to this land. When you talk about America, America is the land. It's North America, South America, Central America. The United States is a corporation that runs this land, that governs this land, and manages this land because the people here don't have enough knowledge to take over.
Mr. Scott,
But America itself is not racist. It's the system and the people that are racist.
And there's Miss Sims. Boy, I got the whole gang here tonight, boy, because I'm getting ready
Oh,
to
Miss Sims, where you been?
I'm getting ready to crucify Minneapolis, St.
I
Paul,
know,
the
I
whole
know, I
state,
know.
the whole state
Per
of
usual,
Minnesota.
yep, per
And,
usual.
but before I do that, I have Mr. Scott. This was something that you mentioned Saturday on the show about the presence of our people before there was the United States of America. The things that you write about in your publication. Do you agree with Dr. Casey that America is different from the United States of America?
100%, I agree with that. Because we are, as I said on the program, we are foundational Americans that have been here since the beginning of this country. And so we have every right. I mean, this takes stripping us of voting and coming. We've already settled all of these things. So yeah, this is the manipulation. We are foundational people. Nobody knows when the native got here, when the black. We don't have we don't know all of that. Some of this we have to go in books and try to see if we believe it or not. But we do know that we were here at the beginning of this country. We know that we were here on this land when this country was started. And so that makes us foundational Americans, as much Americans with a foothold in this country as anyone else. And the whole thing is the business part, as Dr. Casey says, tries to strip us of that. They try to sell it to us. They try to make us buy out. But see,
It's really
I
making
can't
us.
be bought and sold. See, they can't buy
It's
and sell me. See, that's
Mr.
over with
Scott.
for me.
It's really more of not buying and selling you, but making you to not be aware. If they keep you distracted, if they keep you not abreast of the fact that you are native to this land and they can keep control. It's almost like have y'all seen that McDonald's movie about where the guy came in and he started doing business with him and he got them so bad. Oh my god. I understand the whole clown and the circus stuff because if it was based on and the hamburglar and all them, if it was based on the way the guy came in and robbed them of their ideal and then kicked them out of the company, then it all makes sense. But it's the same thing when if we can keep if they can keep us thinking about the little stuff, the things that is not really making a huge difference, then we won't even consider the fact. I mean, even the lie itself that everybody is from Africa that's black, that in itself keeps us thinking that we belong somewhere else. And just that fact alone will have us thinking that we have no title to this land and this place as natives.
Sure. And
Um,
that's why they don't say they're not Swedish Americans. They're not English Americans. They're not, but we have to be African. So that's
Mhm,
where that whole manipulation thing
mhm.
comes in.
uh, uh, Miss Sims, you want to comment on that before I talk about Saturday?
What was the question? I hear some of the answers. What was your question to these two? To the
The
two?
question, my question was, in the sense of, we started out with the premise, Tim Scott saying that uh, America
Okay.
is not a racist country, and then we talked about the Virginia Lieutenant Governor saying that black and minorities are basically people that are conservative, but they don't vote that way. And then I finished up, of course, with Mr. Herschel Walker, talking about John Lewis
Okay.
being a great African American, but that the voting bill does not reflect the true character of Mr. John Lewis.
Okay. Uh, Number one, I really regret that I haven't actually gone back and read the John Lewis Act. Just scattered. pieces, but I always mean to go back and read. Okay, starting off with what your topic was. It's kind of the questions that you did today in regards to
Do black Republicans really reflect black concerns?
uh, not down here. I'll just speak from my experiences and from where I'm from. Not down here. The I always keep in mind politics, strategy, power, and control. It seems to be a strategy and a control method to keep blacks from voting because if more numbers of votes, black persons, and we're talking about blacks or people of color voted, then that puts more fear in them in terms of losing the control that they still have at whatever levels and wherever they are in regards to I heard you come in on talking about the business part of what's all going on. And I think a lot of Republicans, even nationally, as I listened to them over the years, a lot of blacks that I listened to and heard, they're seeking power and control, and their strategy seems to be they would be closer to it. It might be easier for them to attain that if they switched to the Republican Party. Whereas if they attain any national positions for them, it's very temporary, and they're being used. They're allowing themselves to be used, or think everything's a okay. And it reminds me of last week's Mr. Scott on Don, Don Allen's show in regards to talking to Republican. Um,
Oh wait, hold on, hold on,
okay, I
Miss
will go
Sears.
there. Okay,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
will go there.
don't go there, because
Okay,
because
well, okay,
I'm getting ready to go full blown there. I'm getting ready
okay.
to
Let
go.
me let me okay. Let me tune into about the business part that I came in when Mr. Scott was connecting to. Just the first civil rights bill in the country was in 1866, and it dealt with supposedly inclusion of all people. It was after the war, and all people were to be treated equally when it came to business and contracts with the government, etc., etc. Through the years, that got watered down, and a lot of that got stripped. But recently, just last year, 2021, that bill, the Congress, House, and Senate went back and revised part of that bill that that excluded black people from being involved in and having their just dues for contracts and doing business and things like that. It was called it's now it's called, and it was revised from the 1866 first civil rights bill, and it was renamed. It can be called nowadays. It can be called the Economic Inclusion Civil Rights Act of 2020. So a lot of black folk are supposedly now back in that bill. The way it kind of started out in regards to getting in on a lot of the contracts, and that came about when I saw your thing about what is it, Twitter or something. It
Oh
reminded
yeah.
me of where this bill came out of in terms of Comcast and I think his last name is Allen, wanting to be Comcast, wanted to trample all over him, and he took it. He took it all the way and won. But okay, we'll go on. I'm late, so we'll go on. Get into what you want.
Mr. Scott, I
Yeah.
must say that I really enjoyed you guys Saturday evening, Saturday morning. Um, especially the first, and I had this very specific 27 minutes and 45 seconds. And this is when your Republican candidate decided that he wanted to speak out about abortion and the problem on our southern borders. And I don't know how much further you can be from the southern border than you are, and I'm only 12 miles away. So but anyway, to go on, he spoke about faith in God and how Republicans always want to tie abortions to faith. I do not understand. We have two women on the panel. Do you think, Mr. Scott, that it's fair for you and I to determine what these women do with their body?
Well, of course not. And as far as the guest that we had, that guy was a nut. I mean, this guy,
Oh, don't
I
worry. I'm
know
I'm I'm I'm, I'm going through the
if you're
whole
talking
nine
about that
yards.
guy, I mean,
Yes, sir.
and I know him. I know his family. His grandfather and his great grandfather were great, wonderful Minnesotans. His grandfather, Frank White, wrote a book on black baseball in this area. I mean, it's a wonderful historical book. And that gentleman that was on our show was a number one draft pick for the Houston Rockets. Number one pick. Okay, because Kevin McHale, who's from here, used to watch him play all the time. But when he got to the league, he said he didn't want to fly. He's not going to fly on planes, and that they need to give him a limousine and they need to give him a bus to take him across the country to games.
Wow.
And so that went on and on. Then they sent him to the minor leagues, and we had bus. Then they traded in, and basically he put a lawsuit, I think, on the National Basketball League about them and their treatment of people with mental health issues, which, I mean, it's two separate things. Obviously, mental health can be a debilitating thing for people. That can be something
Yeah.
that needs to be addressed with professionals. I understand that. But he had $1 million contracts, and he got on the plane when he was in college. He played at Iowa. He was the number one draft pick. But his Republican stand,
does that diminish his mental health issues?
I know it really doesn't. And I think that that's kind of the crux to me, of this gentleman, that he still has those. And as far as now, he's really a staunch Republican. And James listened to the program about his stance on things. And here in Minnesota, they're not going to rally around him as a Republican. I mean, he's not, I can't see that he goes anywhere. But I mean, everybody can have an opinion. Everybody can have their issues. I enjoyed talking with him, hearing what his platform is, but I never heard what his plan is. I heard him throw shade on a lot of people on abortion and throwing shade on the Democrats. Okay, but what's your plan? What's going to get me to vote for you if you don't have a platform? I didn't hear a platform from him.
Well, his platform was that he's a non-globalist, which probably most of the people listening to this program don't even know what the hell that means. He also talked about how he plans to restore family rights and, of course, abolish Planned Parenthood. Uh, I'm assuming here, if unless we're doing abortions in the back alley again, but Miss Sims, this is something that women have been, talked about. I mean, I remember my grandmother and them talking about the same subject, back in the day. And I mean, what do you think about men trying to legislate your body, Miss Sims? I mean, still, even today.
It's still always in the political realm, and I as it surfaced through the years, back and forth, etc., etc. I always get to the point where, listen, think about, okay, how am I personally going to handle this and deal with it and treat people, etc., etc. And I always come back to, you treat people um, in a humane way. You treat people like you want to be treated. And if they're gonna go, if some people think they're gonna go to hell in a hand baskets, fire and fury is gonna come down on that. If all that's gonna happen, I'm gonna leave that up to Jesus and Jesus Christ. He'll deal with that. I need to deal. I need to deal. I want to deal with the people personally, and then I have deep thoughts about it. A lot of times when you hear people say there's only one race, you have to. And I thought about, I know what they meant, but I dove a little deeper into it. And this is true, especially if you are a Christian and you believe in, no matter what denomination, and you believe in the Bible, etc., etc. I went all the way back. I went all the way back to the beginnings of the Bible in regards to Adam and Eve, and even before Jesus. If you really believe in the Bible and what it says from the beginning, that everybody comes from Adam and Eve. Nobody that I know of, except maybe Eve, that I know of, living or dead, got here on this planet by any other way than a woman's body. Nobody thinks about that. No men. I think if men thought of that, uh, they contribute to the genes and the sperm, etc., etc. But nobody that I know throughout history, even nowadays, everybody that I know got and was born by means of a woman's body birthing them into existence. Whether unfortunately babies die in early death, etc., etc. So if you think about that, there is only one race. Our DNA connects us all along the thing, all along that, through that, our DNA, and this is where the one race thing comes. Our DNA connects us into some manner.
But,
abortion.
hold on, Miss Sands, because if you go to the book of Leviticus, Genesis, Leviticus is where we get divided into races.
By man.
But
the abortion issue has to do with when a child gets here, and see that, and the circumstances of where this conception happens. If a girl is 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, if there's no relationship between these people, I mean, there's a lot of psychological and mental things that really come into play on that. And does the woman have support? Does she have support in what she's doing?
What if it's through rape or incest? I mean, all these different things.
All that has to be taken into consideration. But back to my point, if men thought of that, hey, if it wasn't for a woman, I wouldn't be here. Then they would value. I think they would value all men. A lot of men do. Most men do. But all men would value a woman and protect her in some manner. They wouldn't want to be raping her, abusing her, etc., etc. So you value anything that you value, you take care of. You value your car, you take care of. And as far as you were talking, one other thing that I thought of in regards to the abortion type thing, to me, it's kind of a facade. I have to in that manner in regards to their some people want to protect the unborn child and its rights to exist, etc., etc. But do you go are you, but do they look after that child once that child is here? Do they look after
Okay,
that
We're
okay.
not
child
Miss
all
Sims,
the way
look.
you,
all the
Miss
let me
Sims,
finish
you
I,
let me
no,
I
finish
got a
all
question.
but
I
you
got
didn't
one
went to the
more
child. We're talking about abortion. We're talking
I'm
about a
talking about
because
fetus.
abortion. I'm
listen,
We're
talking
talking
about
Miss
about the
children.
fetus.
Miss
So
Sims,
We're
they
not
were
talking
get
about after it gets past 17
Miss
weeks.
Sims,
Then
but
it's a
Miss
but
Sims,
child.
here's where it falls
Miss
apart to
Sims.
me.
But wait a
They
minute, Miss Sims.
Hold on, Mr. Dr.
they
Dawson.
a lot of people will die for that baby the right to live. And to me, if you're really sincere of that, you will stick with that child after it's born. You won't allow the system to not educate that child,
Miss
to
Sims,
not to protect that child.
we're
It's all
talking about a,
together.
no, it's not, because an abortion means that there never was a child. There was no child educated or anything because it was aborted. That's the purpose of an abortion.
I can.
Dr. Casey, this whole thing
You're
about
not listening to what
men,
I'm saying.
about men and babies, it
What,
hurts me to poot. I don't even want to think about having an
listen.
abortion.
Okay, so first and foremost, I want to just replay some of the things that Miss Sims just said. First, she said men should value women just because they bring life into this earth. But then you also talk about raising the children once they're here, because if the women that give life to the children aren't raising the children, neglect the children, abuse the children, then that's
That's
why
not what I
men and
said.
people
That's not what I said. But go ahead.
you
I'm with you.
you did you totally said that men should value women and how they should value women because they bring life into this earth. You said that. And
I
then
said it, but not in those words. I said it, but
this
go
is
ahead.
but
Go
that
ahead. Your interpretation. I'm listening to your
no,
interpretation. Go
that's what
ahead.
you said. And then you also then you said that who's going to take care of these babies once they're born and all of that. That was the last little part you said. But if the women that's having the babies aren't taking care of the babies, then that is why people don't respect and value women. These women, the amount of respect that men have for women sometimes is not about somebody outside of their parent that hurt them. Sometimes it's because they've been neglected, mistreated, and all these other things by the women that was supposed to care for them. And now they want to oversee and say what can and can't happen and what can and can't be, because they feel like they know more or know better than the people that may have or may not have raised and played a part in raising them. Everybody does not have this honorable matriarch that does all of these superhero things. That is not a reality in the world. A lot of people dealing with neglect, childhood neglect from women, so they're not going to have respect for people that don't value and honor them when they're children. If they're um beat, talk too crazy, my number one goal as a parent is to make sure that my son doesn't uh resent black women, because a lot of times men go into the world already beat up, already bruised in their spirit and in their soul, because it's black women is telling them all type of craziness, always just yeah at the back of their neck about other things, even when they little small. It starts with the you ain't ish and all of these things, most times because they did not have an abortion, sometimes when they should have, and sometimes they should have been practicing safer sex. But it's a lot of resentment that goes into parenting for some women, and that is what creates this even from back as far as you can go, as far as the time will tell, whether white or black, that is what creates this disdain that we see in some men.
Mr. Scott,
Well, I
I'm
can tell
not
you
gonna
as a
dispute all that. I mean, I was trying to get a point, the point across how, as a society, men and women, how a lot of our thinking and our actions don't make really a lot of sense in regards to looking out and caring for each other. when you
Well,
go
I
right
can tell
to
you
the bottom
though.
line, it doesn't make sense. I believe people when they say, in terms of the abortionists and they're willing to give their lives for them. A lot of people have, but to me, if you value something that much, whatever you just don't. Once the child is born, you just don't turn your back and go away. That doesn't
Well,
make
see,
sense to me.
Miss Sims, I can tell you that as
It
a child
happens, but
protection supervisor, for 25 years,
mhm.
I can tell you that some of these folks that have kids are not prepared to have kids.
Right, I
Some of these
believe it.
folks,
I know some of
there
them.
are
Yeah,
people, there are people in relationships that shouldn't be in a relationship.
I
There are
believe
people,
it.
see, this doesn't work for everybody. And
I
there are
know,
people
right?
that have mental health issues and mental things. I had cases where this one girl, she could have kids just like that. I mean,
Hmm.
she was like in her 20s and had
Girl.
10 kids. Still had 10 kids.
Yeah.
And they all went, most of them went to her mother, who was doing how in the world she could do it. And then she had another kid. And so the county's like, we've been over backwards to give her all these 10 kids. We can't give her no more kids. This wouldn't be good for the kids to do it. And the girl tells me, I'm going to keep having kids until you let me have one. I'm saying it's
Mm,
not up to
wow.
me.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's what I'm
But then
thinking.
you
That
get
fits in
into
right to what I
things where
said.
people aren't prepared. They aren't, it becomes a real challenging. There are people like that, and
Right.
that's fortunately everybody isn't like that. I mean, I would look at these kids and these families and say, well, my two boys meant the world to me. I take them to school every day. I pick them up. I go to all the games. I do everything, and they have kids, and they just have them. I mean, mentally, for whatever reason, the attachments and all these things. I mean, I watched folks. I watched many
I think
families.
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
a theory and belief that if you ever like when you get somebody pregnant, if you didn't want to have children, if you wanted to have an abortion but they kept it anyways, you're going to be like nonchalant about it because it's not a desire that you actually had. It was just something that you went through with.
But see, Dr. Casey, I got to take a little exception here because Temptations had a song out called "Papa Was a Rolling Stone,"
My daddy
and
was
back
one.
during right, and that didn't, I mean, hey, we got around. It didn't matter, and we didn't believe in, the contraception like they believe in now, and you might have, two or three baby mamas. One might be next
Or
door.
five.
I mean,
Right.
but right
You know,
now
but
in today's society, people are dragging you for the things like people think that uh uh these older couples that's been together for all these years that it's just been a straight and narrow road.
no,
People
no, no,
have
no.
this
Yeah.
misconception that their grandmothers was just with they pawpaw the whole time, and they don't know that's the fifth or sixth pawpaw that they done seen.
Right. Right.
Like
And see, one of the differences now is because back in the day it was very, very seldom that you went to jail for child support. Most of the time they couldn't find your ass or whatever the deal was, you know, you and the baby mama might know everything about the whole relationship, but the welfare
you
office
got
is
to pay
not
more
gonna
child
know.
support for
The
yeah
sheriff's
for
office
that.
is not gonna know. And I mean, it was for a while. It was almost a tradition in my family where you got you were almost judged by how many kids you had on the outside more than what you had on the inside. But like I said, things change,
Well,
and
if you remember, I said this, and it connects to what Mr. Scott was saying, how in working with the unsheltered population here, so part of that group or division is working on child protection because a lot of those folks, when they were younger, they were have babies having babies, and they fit into the category of being abused by not all were real young, but abusive relationships, etc., etc. Now time has gone on, these people, a lot of people seems to have grown up mentally and emotionally and physically and saw the value of the children, and they want their children back. The system isn't letting them have them back. Whereas some of the people in the system see the value of what Mr. Scott has said several times. Uh, the system should be kind of like a wraparound system in terms of taking the child away for various reasons, and some are very legitimate. But now a lot of the people now that are working on this, they want to get their children back somehow, and so I think earlier this month they even met with some of the politics champion and the other House of Representatives. They met with these people for some help, and some of them are getting them back under various conditions, whatever. Because and they're also realizing that um, the child protection system is also a pipeline to homelessness and on being unsheltered, because a lot of these children enter the system at various age. Some of them don't finish school, etc., etc. But at 18, if I'm right, I mean, bye, see you later. They're on their own, and so a lot of them automatically, a lot of them get into trouble. Some of them don't, but some of them get into trouble. Some of them end up being homeless. So that's a direct pipeline. Just in listening to some of
Yes.
the things that go on, reality that goes on in terms of what's happening to the children as they grow up and age out of the system, and it's sad. And
Well, if you
I think often of Mr. Scott and some of the things he's said
if,
in the past and the role he has played, you know, in that
with,
system, and
with,
try to hey sometimes get people to think of things differently, whatever. And sounds like sometimes he can succeed and sometimes not.
Mr. Scott,
well,
before
when you
you
get
answer
to a
that,
point,
before you answer that, I want to tell you a story, Mr. Scott. Then I want you to comment on it, because I was a member, or I was involved in the foster system, and I know that
well,
the
I'm a
foster
mandated reporter, but I'm sure yours is statute of limitations, so I'm mandated. So, oh, yeah.
no, no, the point being is that the foster care system was a business. They were getting paid to make sure that I got 3 meals a day, that I went to school, whatever the state guidelines were, that's what I had to do. Now, what they thought of me outside of that as a person, I also had a very good idea of, even though it might have been unspoken. But my question to you, Mr. Scott, are we dealing with some of these kids the same way we dealt with the old song? It's cheaper to keep them in the foster system than it is to give them back to their parents.
Yeah. James, you hit that right on the head. As I was going to say, there's a law when kids go into placement and when they're ordered and they get when they're court ordered into placement, they call it a CHIPS petition, child in need of protection and services. Okay. And when they go into placement, there's money called 4E money from the federal government that they reimburse states to pay those families to take care of those kids. Yeah,
Like
it's
a common day slave
a
trade.
huge business. It's a huge business. And then once a family gets a termination of parental rights of a child, that says that you could never parent a kid. You could never parent this kid safely. In in my experience and having worked with families, that may or may not be true. Because see, people grow out of things. I
Mhm.
have had people call me to say, I want to know what happened to my son. I'm working now. I'm just so concerned. I can't, I know he was taken away from me. I have another son now and I'm doing good. And I said, I can't really tell you where this child is or what's going on, but point you to a legal aid that maybe they can help you with that. But see, once they terminate, and then if you have another kid, you're on their radar. You're on their radar after you've already had a termination of your parental rights. So it's a huge, and it's all under the federal government, even though the states run it. And some states do it privately. Like I think in Texas, they have a private system that runs it, just like they have private prisons. And they do it the same way. And it is
But
a pipeline.
a lot of these private organizations, Mr. Scott, are also churches.
Yeah, Catholic. Yeah, some of them
It
are.
sounds like a
They are.
modern day slave trade.
They are.
Yeah, I mean, the one I happened to be in was Episcopal, but I mean, there were others around,
Yeah.
but I'm just, I was just thinking about that, like it, to me,
That
it was
sounds like
always.
the
It is a business. It is. They
it
have
sounds like
turned
the
it
epitome
into.
of child trafficking.
It's a
All,
But
business.
I mean,
all,
you might not be for it might not be for sexual reasons, but that is
Yes,
definitely sounds like the epitome of child trafficking.
it is.
all
And
businesses.
what people
Ex-
really need to know is how to stay out of the child protection system.
yeah.
That's what they need to do. You don't want courts. You don't want the system to tell you how to run your family. If you really don't want that, because then you're at the whim of what they say.
Hmm.
All businesses have, no matter how many you may have to pull back a lot of layers, have some
Businesses
sort of
make money.
finances.
They make
The
money.
money trail has a money trail, and it's used. There's here again, you come across the good, the bad, and the ugly people and behavior. Bottom line, how we treat each other counts. How we treat each other at whatever age in adults, it counts. One of the things, since we've been confined, I discovered YouTube, and one of the things that I watch is Parents Court, and I think by the judge's last name is Lake or something. But you see children that some of them have gone through the system. Some of them are well, all of them are looking for who their parent is. That whether it's the child that's grown up and wants to know, or the mothers or the father has to prove parental whatever. But and it's sad to think of how, like I said, how as we as a people in society treat each other and use each other and things like that. But it all counts how we treat each other, good, the bad, and the ugly. I myself and my family within the last year or so have had a couple young adults through DNA. I have 7 brothers and 1 sister. Through DNA, they have found a connection to my family, and they're searching for. Some of my brothers in their younger year have impregnated these women, and not these women, but some women, and haven't taken care of their parental rights and things. And for some reason, these children don't stay children all their life. They're now adults. Through DNA has helped them tune in and find people, not only in my family. I have 2 people since September or October of last year, and I'm doing what I can to, fill in the gaps in regards if they're looking for some sort of history of, their grandparents or the parents or whatever.
Miss
That,
Sims,
yeah,
Miss Sims, you're preaching to the choir. I
yeah.
moved out here in 2003. In 2004, I got a call from a young man that was 31 years old who told me that I was his father.
Hmm.
So, I mean, you know, and
How did you handle that, James?
I, I knew who his mother was. I handled it pretty well. As far I come from a town where just about everybody in the black community knows everybody anyway. So the rumors are always there. This is your son, so and so and so and so. But as I said, at that particular time, I'm a Rolling Stone. His mama done hooked up with somebody else. I done hooked up with 4 or 5 more. And
Oh
hey,
Lord.
I'm good. You know, So, but when the young man calls me and says, hey, my name is James Ears Lamont, so and so, I'm like, oh, I mean, how many kids you gonna name Ears unless there's some kind of goddamn connection there? So, and eventually I went and met the young man and so forth and so on, and we're good friends. I know my grandkids now. I know I got a great grandkid. So I mean, but as I said, like I understand where Mr. Sims is coming from. I understand exactly about Mr. Scott because, I mean, hey, you had a wife, you had a couple girls on welfare, and you had to hustle on the side. But, hey, things change and now we're civilized. Uh,
And sadly, the parents, the my older brothers, their parents or whatever, they're deceased now, and so my parents had 9 children. It was like 5 in one group, then a 4 or 5 year gap, and then 4 in the latter group, which includes me. Uh, the 5 in the upper, my older brothers and sisters are deceased, and so it's me and my brothers now, 3 brothers, and so I try to fill in the gaps wherever I can, and I I I I let them know, tell me, how can I help them? What do they need
yeah.
from me in regards to
Y- y-
wherever they're going or what they need?
The,
Well, I
the
mean,
dynamic of families is, I've done a family tree on my grandmother from Alabama. Her father, his brother, and his sister married into one family. Okay, they married into siblings and there was 17 kids in that family.
Mhm.
So all of those people are relatives. All those people are, and I never knew. I know my grandmother's father, the Lawlers, but I didn't realize the Richardsons that the mother was, and she had 17 siblings, and 3 of them was married to their other siblings. And so I know
yeah,
my
I mean,
grandmother used to say things like, "Oh, Ida's coming up here. She's my double cousin." I had no idea what the heck is a double cousin. She's cousin on both sides. First cousin
yeah,
on both sides.
you know, but hey, but it goes to show, like I said, like how things have changed, how the dynamics of the family
Yeah,
have changed
yeah,
the whole 9 yards. Um, Mr. Scott, getting back to Saturday, I also
yeah.
heard, and I know, you've kind of expressed your opinion of this young man, but uh, one of the other points that he pointed out was that uh, civil rights leaders do not quote Malcolm X. And I said to myself, well, there's a very good reason for that. Because in I believe was it 1964, uh, when Malcolm became a black Muslim, there was no Baptist minister, there was no black Republican, there was no white Republican, there was nobody other than the Nation of Islam that recited Malcolm X because Malcolm X was too radical.
Mhm.
But now all of a sudden, in order to justify their platform, we had these Republicans wanting to spout Malcolm X.
They're gonna do the same thing once Farrakhan go on to glory, because they don't nobody mess with Farrakhan right now, and Farrakhan say some very radical things. I actually understand why they think that they treat him the way he do, because the things that he say be so strong and so I don't
Correct.
want to say that they're threats. It's more of a like he's promising to do harm though, so it makes them feel threatened. And in order to really maneuver the way that we need to maneuver, you have to be less threatening, but just as powerful.
I noticed that too. Those what he was saying in the analogies and stuff, and it caused me to go back and think the why and wherefores. I think one of the things how Malcolm X he was showcased. He rose above everybody else, and I think one of the reasons was he had no qualms about calling white people devils, white devils. I mean, things like that. And I think his speech, a lot of, I think a lot, maybe a lot of black folk didn't buy into whatever he was saying, was because he combined the religion thing and the political thing together. And a lot of folk only tapped into where he was coming from as a Muslim and things like that. And maybe
People have a great
even even
misconception.
even Farrakhan. And I think at that time, I believe he in, was it Farrakhan or Malcolm X? Malcolm X. Uh, he and King had followers just as strong, and Farrakhan was even, as I remember, turned off by King and people that were doing the civil rights things, etc., etc. So there was, I think that's one of the reasons, I think, why, because of the combining of the where it's coming from as a Muslim with what he was talking about, what was political things that were going on.
Well, what he does is he really justifies the white fear. I mean, I think that that's when you talk about, even now when you bring it down to police always saying they fear for their life, even though they have guns
Because
and tanks, and there's one black man that's unarmed and they kill him, they're feared. See, it's their conscience. They know that the 400 years of what they've done to us. I mean, I think that that's somehow it's still in there, and it makes them see us as a threat to them. But when you look at reality, we haven't gone around and hung no white people. We haven't gone around and burned down white people's towns. We haven't gone around and did any of those things. But they've done that to us. And so in their mind, if you're a person that you have dogged someone and they get the gun, oh my God,
Yeah,
what are they
I
going
think
to do
that's
to
what
me?
happened.
Because
Yeah,
my
yeah,
that's how I see it. People say
yeah.
that that's not the way it is, but I really feel that in their consciousness, I believe that that there is a God and that we do have
see, but
conscience, that we do know what's right, we do know what's wrong, and they know
that's
what they
hundreds
did.
that's hundreds and thousands, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years of that guilt.
Yeah,
That's not just
yeah,
surface level guilt. That's in ingrained in their soul guilt. And then you think about the when the Haitians were not defeated, the only black country not defeated. All of those
and the way
things
they've
and
been
how
treated since, and the way they've been treated
but you
since.
see how they're treated because they wasn't overcome. And then if you think about we are the most resilient people on the face of this planet. Like, and I'm not gonna even hold you. I'm not, this is not no boast. This is as humble as it gets. Black people are the most resilient. They can tear us down, we'll build it back up. They tear us they've been tearing us down for so the whole existence of black people in this colonized place. And despite all, every time they tear us down, it don't matter how many Tulsas, how many Harlems, how many wherever they go, and they try to tear us down, we still come back and we come back better and stronger. So
And
it is
if we were dangerous, we would go back and do that to them. We would go look at all the things that they've done, and we
the
still, like
fear
you say, our
the fear
resiliency
is
keeps
not,
us going.
I don't think the fear is for most. Some fear physical harm or danger, but the real fear, large scale, is that we will realize who we are and take this shit over, and then they gonna have to suffer and be in the same position, and that's what they fear.
I
See,
think
Bill,
what's going on, and it's proof here is what Mr. Scott and Dr. Casey are talking about. Nowadays, is that no matter who you are, after a point, if you get oppressed and abused and taken advantage of over and over and over again, there comes a point where that person is going to start fighting back or standing up for themselves and become a challenge to, say, A and B. B is going to become a challenge to A, and then that, I think some of that's where the fear is coming from, when people start coming back, as Dr. Casey is saying, coming back and owning it. And that happened after here after George Floyd because we had segments that were going into our communities. They were out of state, wherever, going and trying to intimidate the black communities and in our community. And my daughter was so in tune to it that she went, and one of the things that came out was that if you have things in your yard or whatever that people could hide behind, etc., to bring them inside and whatever she did all that. And then what was sad to me for me to see, a lot of the I saw a picture of a lot of the males in terms of protecting the businesses up on Broadway in the communities. They actually armed themselves and came out, and I saw a picture of one of my friends that I went to church with. I saw him geared out with his big long gun and things like that, and they were saying that they had it. That they had to protect what they were fighting back, and they weren't gonna take it anymore. And it was
Miss Sims, you got any social media connections?
I do Facebook.
Okay, go back on Facebook and look at the riots in Los Angeles for Rodney King.
Yeah, I
And I'm
saw
pretty,
those. Yeah.
and I'm pretty sure that all you had to do was transpose the picture because the black people standing in front of the stores to protect their business
Hmm.
was the same. But
Hmm.
I want to talk about growth here because everybody seems to be stuck on Malcolm and his dealings with the black Muslims. But I want to read you this little excerpt that I got. This is from just 2 days before Malcolm was assassinated. And he was no longer, even though we still use the term Malcolm X, at this time he had changed his name to Malik El Shabazz. And he had a quite different outlook on things. Let me read this to you. I'm listening to leaders like Nassar, Ben Bella, and Nkrumah. It awakened me to the dangers of racism. I realized that racism isn't just a black and white problem, it's brought bloodbaths to just about every nation on earth from one time to another. Brother, remember the time that white girl came to the restaurant? The one that wanted to help black Muslims and the white people get together? And I told her that there wasn't a ghost of a chance, and she went away crying. Well, I've lived to regret that incident. In many parts of the African continent, I saw white students helping black people. Something like this kills a lot of argument. I did many things as a black Muslim that I'm sorry for now. I was a zombie then, like all black Muslims. I was hypnotized, pointed in a certain direction, and told to march. Well, I guess a man's entitled to make a fool of himself if he's the only one to pay the cost. It cost me 12 years. That was a bad scene, brother. The sickness and the madness of those days, I'm glad to be free of them. In a lot of ways, I'm like Malcolm. Instead of taking, it took him 12, it took me almost 40.
You
But
know, that make me think about him and Ali being at odds. Um and then Ali going back and regretting the same way that he kind of did the decisions that he was making and the people that he cut off behind being a Muslim at the time. That's what that reminded me of.
Yeah, and I remember also reading similar things that you just read, Mr. King, as those Muslim leaders, Malcolm and even Farrakhan, have aged through the years and had different experiences. Where they're come, the positions where they're coming from isn't as hard and cutthroat as it was in the past. So they have whatever they've been running into in their experiences and whatever, they have their thought and their thinking, their actions different from in earlier in their careers and things. In fact, I was Farrakhan a couple years ago. I was reading, some things online and stuff like that, uh, in regards to where they were coming from. So it is like I said before, with what we mentioned before, that people who lost their children at a young age, they grow up and have different experiences, different thoughts, and things like that. You think differently and value things differently, and that's the process, I guess, of growing up as part of that rethinking and whatever's going on.
Well,
Go ahead, Mr. Scott.
The Malcolm time was really quite a time in this country. I mean, and as Dr. Casey was pointing out with Muhammad Ali, there's a very interesting side to that when he went to the Muslims and he had Angelo Dundee as his manager. See, when he fought Sonny Liston, Sonny was tied up with the mobsters. He was all tied up, and they eventually took him out. But Angelo was smart enough to know that by letting Muhammad go with Herbert and the Muslim, he could keep them. The mafia couldn't touch them. The mafia couldn't touch them with them. And he really insulated at that time, and that's what made the man really great. I believe that's what really made the man really great. He was able to beat the Supreme Court. They was going to send this man to prison. They had already had because he wouldn't go to war. They already had the votes to send him to prison, and that was turned around. That was a real cool time with Martin and Malcolm, the Black Panthers. I mean, all of the people that were raising up. I mean, that was just upheaval like we haven't seen that since. We
Yep,
haven't
yep.
seen that since.
And it wasn't just black folk that I mean, got into that in regards, number one, the injustice of it. What he was saying was right. It's not like I hear you all things that I hear you all say that Herschel Walker is espousing, but Ali was, as I remember, what I heard was, right on the spot, and he was speaking from where his spot where he was coming. Why should I go across the country and fight somebody who hasn't done anything to me, etc., etc.? So, with him coming from that stand, he had to have a lot of support and protection, or else he could have done away just like that.
He also had the respect of the black soldier in Vietnam, because no one in Vietnam really, said, hey, this guy is a bad guy. As a matter of fact, most black soldiers I knew at that particular time, we all backed Muhammad Ali. The fact of it was is that most of us were stuck in country because our goddamn neighborhoods was burned up. My house was on fire in Newark. What the hell I'm gonna come back to a house full of, a burned down house for?
And I think because he was an elevated sports figure in the public and made lots of people lots of money, etc., etc. So he had that also going for him in regards to
well,
out there doing like that.
he actually made more money after his protest than he did
Right,
before.
right. But I'm saying he wasn't someone. He wasn't James James King out there saying, "I'm not going. I'm scared, and I don't want to."
No, actually, Miss Sims, he was even worse because he was a black Muslim
Yep,
saying
yep,
that he
yep.
wasn't going to
That's
go.
right. It was against his
So,
religion
right.
and things like that. And if you have, and he had some standing on that, because if you separate church and state, that was doing it in regard to your belief and where you were coming from. So he had a foothold on that aspect too.
You can't talk about separating church and state, and we just got finished talking about abortion less than 5 minutes ago. So, you know,
Yeah,
Well,
people
James, could
do.
I ask
People
you just a
do.
quick
The
question?
reality, people do.
Ask a quick a quick question, James. You were starting to get into something, and it seems like you have a real kind of, oh, I don't know, an affinity or something for Republican in particular. And I want to know if you can kind of enlighten us on what your stance is on the Republican
hold on, wait,
this
wait, wait.
God and
I can give you a couple categories that I have problems with. Anybody that has Reverend in front of their name and proclaims to have a congregation that has a particular brand behind it, be it Catholic, Episcopalian, Pentecostal. Yes, I have. Republicans also fall into that category because I cannot find one thing, not one, that a Republican has done that has successfully helped Black people to progress our cause without having some type of either economic or religious entity attached to it.
well, just
I'm just
let me
glad
make
that
sure I understand that. Let me make sure I understand. You're talking about the Republicans, but then you said religion, so I guess you're throwing the Pope and
Yes, I'm throwing the Pope.
all that in the
I'm
same
throwing
bag.
I'm throwing the Monsignor. I'm throwing the assistant deacon that you got down there at
I'm
whatever
glad that
church
I
that
don't go by
is.
Reverend.
You know, I think that if anyone has listened to my show for the last 2 years, they know that the only thing that I have a bigger problem with than Republicans is religion.
Uh-huh.
And I
Listen,
and I
so
and I say that as my background as a preacher's son.
my card says non-religion minister, just in
We
case anybody
we
was
went
curious. I just want to make
we went
sure.
through your credentials, Dr. Casey, because I
I
asked
just,
you
I just
about
want to.
I asked you about that one time about about the term reverend and how much
I just wanted to make that
kind
clear.
of
I do not
respect
use
that return.
Reverend.
Yeah,
Reverend is not a part of my title.
yeah, no, but I'm just saying, but like Mr. Scott,
So
going back to
You're not the Reverend Dr. Casey.
No, no, mm-mm, I'm
no,
sure not.
but
Dr. Casey is enough. I'm okay with that.
but and I believe that
CEO.
those particular types of uh, uh, denominations have done more to
Damn it.
separate
Hmm.
the if you want to call it that, Miss Sims, the human race than anything whatsoever. I mean, okay, I'm a Jehovah's Witness. What only 150,000 people are going to make it to heaven? I'm a Baptist. No Methodist is going to make it to heaven. I'm a Catholic. No Muslims are going to make it to heaven. I'm a Muslim. There's no such thing as heaven, right? You know,
Well, James, I believe where you're coming from, and you're speaking from your experiences, and even
yeah,
Dr. King. All of us
I'm
are speaking
speaking
from
from
our
my
experience,
heart.
and
I'm not
you've
telling
been
you have to
very
believe
yeah,
that way.
and right, and I get that, and you've been very clear and upfront about that, and I respect that. But that, in terms
But
of my faith and stuff, has I have not experienced those type things or people. I know they exist. I know in
what
reality.
type things?
I'm not just a pretty face, James.
Uh,
What
but
type
but
Pretty
but
things, Miss
but
Sims?
but but
what he was
also
describing in terms of what he just described. Uh,
but
uh,
also
he's
Miss
expressing.
Sims, you haven't set through a dark night with a dead body next to you.
Right.
You haven't
That's
experienced
right.
even a night in a dormitory where you have 100 men, you know, in one space, and all of them are potentially dangerous. And I'm talking about being incarcerated.
That's right.
You know,
You're
The
right.
so
military
You're
feel like
so
right.
that too.
so you know, I've been through 3 wars, 4 penitentiaries, and I'm thankful for every
And I
experience.
and I and
And every one
I'm
of them has
glad you
made an
survived it. 'Cause,
indelible,
yeah.
they've all made an indelible memory. My
Mhm.
memories are not the same as Mr. Scott's.
Right. Right.
Dr. Casey's memories are not going to be the same as mine, even
Right.
though
Right.
in her experience it was a tire, and in my experience it
Hmm.
was a palm tree, a rubber
Right.
tree. But
Right.
you know, uh, but so therefore,
Right.
that's the purpose of this show, is so that we can all express our particular opinions.
Right. And during that Vietnam period, I come from a family of veterans. I had a brother that went to Vietnam during that time, and I experienced and saw. At that time, it was you were selected to go by um, a lottery. It wasn't volunteer this time. It was selected by lottery, and I remember my brothers, all a lot of the black males and white males, when they did the lottery, did it so often, they lived in fear in terms of their number would not be called, and
It
some
was
people were so.
broadcasted on TV like the
Yeah,
Yep,
football
yep, yep,
lottery.
yep,
yeah,
yep, and
You
some.
were just hoping your number didn't come up, and
Yep,
my
yep,
number was very
and
low.
and some people were marrying to get out of the lottery or going to Canada and things like that. So it was
and
stressful
in
time.
most cases, Miss Sims, we didn't want them goddamn people that had to be put on the lottery in order to come over there, because they got more of us killed than it would have before, because they didn't want to be there. But that's a
Mm,
whole that's
yeah,
a whole different
that's right. I
story
hadn't thought.
for a
Yep, yep,
different case.
yep. That's
You
right.
know,
That's right.
kind of getting back on what we were talking about, as far as
Political
uh,
stuff.
what the different parties were offering to black people. And
Well, Tim
another
Scott,
thing that
you evaded the question of Tim Scott. I brought up Tim Scott. You want?
uh,
I didn't know if that was somebody you supported, or I just would like to
Tim
know.
Scott, Tim, I support Tim Scott the same way I support Larry Elder. And you're not from out in this part of the country, so you probably don't know. But Larry Elder was the black gentleman, the conservative, that was running against Governor Newsom in the recall. Um, no, I do not. I think Tim Scott. As a matter of fact, I don't have a dictionary here, but I'm pretty sure if there was a picture beside the term Uncle Tom, it would be Tim Scott. Uh, you know, there are a few others that I could probably lump up in there. Uh, the Lieutenant Governor of Virginia. I don't know if they have a Missy Tom, or a Missy, Uncle. I don't know what you'd call her, but I think that almost any uh, black man, woman, or child that supports Republicans either has a slave mentality, or maybe they just need to go back and just reevaluate. And I'm not saying, maybe when you reevaluate, you'll come to the same conclusion. Reevaluation does not always mean that you change your mind. But, you know, just like, I get conservatives that say, James, you're a little too rigid on some of your stances. Hey, I go back, I reevaluate, I still come up to the same conclusions. But, there's a
Well,
lot of internal
so then
prejudice.
Democrats. So then Democrats is the way to go.
No,
No,
sir. No,
no.
sir.
I was about to say,
The way to go is that you study your candidates, you study your issues, and you vote the way your conscience makes you feel good.
but
And
you
if
just
that
said
could
Not
be,
you
could
give
that
me
be,
purpose.
but you're saying
not
that
my
that can't be
conscience.
Republican.
No,
You're
no, no,
saying
I'm
that
not.
can't
No.
be. It can't be.
No,
You're saying it can't be
I'm saying,
Republican.
I'm saying that is my idea of a Republican. That does not have to be your idea of a Republican.
No, I'm not talking
You
about
asked
me.
me my opinion. You asked
I
me
get what
my
you're saying.
opinion of Tim Scott. You asked me my opinion of these people. That's what I gave you. That doesn't, like I said, that does not have to reflect upon your opinion of it.
And you're expressing what I said. One of the things I said last week that I brought up that I saw on Don's show where Mr. Scott co-hosts, and he was they all were interviewing a Republican man for I think it was Hennepin County thing, and Don was real favorable about that, about whatever was going on, and it struck me that people need to realize when you vote for someone, Republican or Democrat, you are not just voting for that person because he's your brother, your father, or your friend. You got to remember that guy might be saying something that's right in tune with what you're where you're coming from or what you work for. You got to remember that when that person, if and when that person becomes in office, he brings the whole party with him. He brings thousands of Republicans with him, and they are. He doesn't rule by himself. He doesn't control that party. So you may think, and so here comes the disappointment when one person gets in office, and he just kind of meshes and mends with everybody else is there. You have to think about it, as James has said, and other people have said, the people think about who you're voting for and think about, for me, I just can't think about me and my self-interest. I have to think about all those around me. We know basically for people who know right and wrong, who's looking out for each other, want the uplifting of it, not only for me, but also realize what it's going to take for everybody to get a piece of the pie and things like that. And when a person comes out and says, I'm going to do this in my first 100 days, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do that, and people like that, that person may believe that, but that's a lie. He can't do anything by himself. He can't. When he gets in there, he's among many, and he's not going to control them. And they
That's
can do
what I
what he
said
said.
earlier,
And
Miss
a
Sims.
lot of people, yeah, a lot of people, they believe that because they see that person as sincere, maybe their neighbor, etc., etc. So politics is not. I mean, politics is not a game for the weak in
Well,
terms
then
of
I have to
or the
ask
hurt
Dr.
and the
Casey
damage.
again.
But
I
I
have to
made
ask
that
Dr.
statement earlier.
I
What?
have to ask Dr. Casey again. Being in Georgia, Atlanta, is the black community behind Herschel Walker?
Hell
They
no,
say
I
he's
can
leading.
answer that.
He's
I
leading.
can answer.
Well,
I can answer
he's
that from
leading. He's
California.
leading. He's leading in the
This is a
polls, or
Now
he's
let
right up
Dr.
there.
this is
Casey.
a Republican.
Who?
This is a Republican state, red state historically.
Okay. Okay.
So, the people that's going to vote for him are not going to be black people, but the black people don't normally turn out in midterm elections either. They only come out when it's presidential elections, to be completely honest. But to Miss Sims' point, I said the same exact thing a lot of times, because they ask about who, which party is better, and all of the politicians have a lot of great hopes, desires, and dreams, but then they get in that office and they cannot do most of those things. So literally, it is, we're setting ourselves up for failure to think that in the current system of democracy that is in place, that we are going to get a candidate that can actually do the things that they run and say. I mean, now they do some. They, try to work out some deals to get some stuff done, but the things that they be gun ho about be things that are unrealistically put into the atmosphere as an expectation for them to do, knowing good and well they can't do it.
And politics is a battle. Where also the two-party system is a battle.
It's a
I
one
mean,
party system. It's just
and
a whole bunch of people with a
and
whole bunch of different opinions.
and in that once you get there, they're battling to keep gain control. And I think
The
since
parties are the government versus the people. It is not the senators versus the whoever in Congress. The real parties are the people of the country, and then the government who runs the country. Because everybody that goes to them meetings, they all be on the same thing. It's just how much they believe on how it's going to affect their bottom line. I don't even think they care about the people's bottom line, because at the end of the day, their bottom line is all that matters, and appeasing the people who are going to vote in their favor. So who's voting in the favor of the however many congressmen and senators that's been in the same seat for the last 20, 30 terms? That's 40, 50 years. Is people the people that's voting for them are the people that look like them. That's not us. But
uh,
that is because we are just now really understanding the narrative behind this country, behind our power and our vote, and a couple other things. But the whole power in voting is like subjective, because it's the people that you put in the office don't have that much power. So if they don't have that much power, yeah, you could vote and your vote can count. But the people that you're putting your votes into, they don't have the power like that. So it has to be a rework of the whole system the whole thing needs to
Well,
change.
yeah,
but
the
But
whole
in
thing needs to
Atlanta,
change,
but
but
again, in Atlanta, are black people voting for Herschel Walker?
No, we just said
we
no three
mi- mi-
times, Mr. Scott.
Mr.
Mr.
See,
Scott, no. You don't mess with that man.
uh, but Mr. Scott, I'm gonna let you kind of get handle this next thing here, because Elon Musk has bought Twitter, and as you know, well, maybe you don't know, but there are two Twitters. There's a black Twitter too. A lot of people don't know that,
Oh.
but there's a black Twitter. But right now, we're just talking about the one that Elon Musk has bought, and we're talking about political power. Now, the Twitter that we know or have known all of this time is public. Anyone, everyone can get on, put your little Twitter handle up there, bye bye, bye bye, you're on. Elon Musk is taking Twitter private. Now, as you know, Mr. Scott, Twitter banned your favorite person, back here a couple of years ago. And he says he's not going to go back on, but how his word is, maybe yes, maybe no. But what is your thoughts, Mr. Scott, about Twitter being bought by Elon Musk and being taken private, and the effect that it'll have on your politics as a platform?
Well, I'm not a big Twitter user. I mean, I'm really not. But obviously, it's an emerging power
$44
media
billion
source.
dollars.
It's an emerging power, and so yeah, they'll get their agenda. They'll, and that's really what it's all about. I mean, just the same as with the different networks. I mean, you can watch CNN, but then you can watch Fox, and you'll get two different views on the same thing. And I think that that's really what it is. I mean, it could be just however you think about it, good versus evil, if you really want to, depending on what side you're on. But I mean, it's a powerful media source, and it's going to allow them to get whatever message that they want to get out to get out.
Do you
who
think
is
the
the
message?
person you're talking about? I never
Uh,
heard of him.
uh, uh, you he's I'll get to you in a minute there, Miss
Okay, okay,
Sims. But
great.
you can look up Elon Musk. He's the guy that sent people close to the edge of space. I think
Oh, his
Mike
own space. Okay, okay,
uh, uh, uh,
gotcha.
Tesla. A lot of things you look at.
Got it
Look
now.
at. Okay. Uh, so, Mr. Scott, do you think that uh, the politics of the platform will change? And do you think that black people will have as much access now that Twitter is going private rather than public?
Like I say, I'm not a big Twitter, and I think it's like everything, Jane. We're left out. We don't own any of these things. We don't own Fortune 500 companies. Why can't we buy it? Why can't we buy it? If it's for sale, why can't we buy it? I mean, it should go to the highest bidder, but we don't have the
Who have
ends.
44? Who have 44 to buy?
We
I
40,
we don't
mean,
we don't we,
44
and that's
billion
what keeps
dollars.
us
yeah. I mean,
going.
collective
We don't have the ends. We don't have the
Mr.
collectively,
ends.
Scott, we can't even buy an NFL football team. You talking about buying $44 billion?
There you go. There you go. There you go. Perfect example. Perfect example.
it would have to
And
be a
so I mean,
collective
this
to
is
do
where
something like.
we're consumers. We're continuing to be the consumer and talk about it.
Well,
And but
wait, because there is fan base. I am an investor at fan base. It is black owned by Isaac Hayes, the third, Isaac Hayes' son,
Son,
and
yes.
it is a. It's still in beta mode. It's still working through because it is a very, very new platform. But we are owners of things. It's just that oftentimes the things that we own aren't supported right off the bat. And it, as a owner, as an investor in the company, it is definitely hard to change from one platform to another exclusively. So I am interested to see exactly what Elon does with this because it can be good. Private meaning that is no longer up for debate. Nobody else can really have a say so over what he's doing to an extent because there's still regulations and things that he has to follow. But I am eager to see what he does with it because Twitter is the wild wild west. You can find everything that you want on Twitter and it's really except for like hate speech and stuff like that. You can find anything on Twitter. So
what is it like Facebook? Is it like a Facebook thing?
Uh,
similar, but
Similar, but
definitely a whole
without
lot
all of
different.
you
You
don't
can't
have
write
a
so
lot
much.
of yeah, and there's not a lot of pictures and things like that. It's mostly
It's more
narrative.
limited, but like they definitely have porn on Twitter. They definitely have all the type of
Well,
things
porn,
that
you
are
got to have
banned.
pictures. If you don't have no pictures, how you gonna have
No,
porn?
you it's no, it's not as many pictures allowed. So on Facebook, you can upload 100 of pictures in one post. On there, you can only do so many. They can only be so big. And it is it's a contained version of all social media, but it's like really one of the first ones. So I am interested to see because he was talking about subscription based stuff and some other things, but he can fumble Twitter. He can I mean like people act like oh he got Twitter, he gonna be the most powerful. He can fumble this bag if he does the wrong thing with Twitter because right now um black Twitter black Twitter is really just the people on Twitter that do their own thing and they have their own conversations amongst the whole Twitter audience. But if he takes away the ability for people to have a regular exchange on Twitter the way it is now, I think that he'll lose out on the business. Even if he restructures it and does something else with it, it won't be the same if he doesn't maintain what is already built.
I would imagine that he's gonna uh, expand it, do something different because his rocket ship just blew up. So he's got to make
That
some
that
money.
that's not neither here
But
nor
look,
there.
but
He's a
look,
billionaire. That
what
rocket ship ain't nothing.
what I open with connects directly to what you all are speaking of in regards to that civil rights act of 1866 and how it last year politicians went back and revised it so that black people could be more involved in their make money off black media and things like that because it started with I don't know if his last name is Allen. He's a black fella. Used to be a comedian, but through the years he's started buying up
You tell
stations,
no, the guy
stations.
he owns the Weather Channel. You know Byron
Yeah, yeah.
Allen.
Byron,
Yeah,
right,
he doesn't
right,
Byron
own
Allen.
that much.
The,
He
the, the,
right.
he
the,
is
the,
just
but
recently
but
getting
but
in his foot in the
Byron
Right.
door.
Allen, Miss Sims, to give you a little bit of background on Byron Allen, and once again, my prejudice is going to show
And I
through here.
watched him and listened to him. But go ahead.
Okay,
He
Byron
ain't got that
Allen,
much.
Byron Allen, in the whole scheme of the NFL, is a pawn of the white shield game. They want Byron Allen to get off into the NFL and these other businesses so that they can have an acceptable token. This is his same role that he played when he had MTV Jams or whatever it was. Though the, the programs that were on at 4 o'clock in the morning when most black people were not watching, and they got white ratings from young kids. So go ahead. You tell
Well,
me. Yeah. Once
whatever,
again, I think you got those
whatever,
rose-colored glasses on, Miss Sims. But go ahead.
Mhm. Leave alone. Those her favorite ones.
wherever he's coming from, and I watched it come out of his mouth on several shows, and I also watched him on the Roland
Do
Martin
do you
show in
do
regards
you
to.
think
But
he's
whatever,
telling the whole
whatever
Not the
he,
case.
truth?
Let it go.
whatever he owned, whatever he's into, he wasn't making money like the others were making money regarding contracts and whatever. And he went up against Comcast. Comcast, and he took it on. It seems like went back and forth for years in regards to what stance he took against what Comcast wanted him to do for whatever reason. For whatever reason, he wasn't going along with, and it came to the point of, as I said, to support not only him but other. It seems like a lot of people are into black media, but they only seem to go so far in regards to a lot of the money and whatever the game is. That's why last year, 2021, politicians went back and revitalized that 1866 Civil Rights Act that back then included everybody who said everybody was American and this and that, and they had the same rights and whatever. But through the years, the Republicans and whomever went to the Supreme Court and whatever and got that changed or watered down. So it only meant talked about international stuff. But anyway, they brought it back into the law now. It's renamed. It's called the Economic Inclusion Civil Rights Act of 2021, and it came out of a black person wanting there was ownership of certain stations and whatever, and
So
there was an entity out there that was unfairly and unjustly not only keeping him down but other black ownership down in regards to sieving and however they set up making their money. It was being stopped by certain people, but this revitalization act now supposedly opens that back up. So everybody should be getting a piece of the pie if you know what you're doing. It's just not going to give it to you on with your pie and cake and ice cream.
Okay, Miss Sims, do me another favor. I want you to look up Byron Allen, and I'm gonna ask
yeah,
you about
because
him
you talk about
next. I'm gonna ask you about him next week.
because
And
she only talking about what he has said. He
please
ain't gonna
say.
tell the truth.
I know.
I'm not going back into his personal history, what he's
No,
done.
no,
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 I'm looking about what
we're talking just about his business.
right,
Just about
right.
his business. I'm not asking you to look for anything else. I'm not asking you to look about who was his girlfriend, what his grades was in high school. I mean, it's just asking you to look back at his business practices,
His
and
business
how
model,
and how
I'm not supporting, I'm not speaking to that. I'm
you
speaking to
just
how
brought
he
it
was.
up.
Yeah, exactly. You did. See, Miss
I'm
Sims,
speaking
Miss
to
Sims.
how what, and I said that whatever
But
way he
you're
was
saying
making
whatever he
money,
told you. It's just like
whatever
believing that whatever the
money, and
politicians
other
say.
people were talking to, whatever way he was making money, and other people were doing it the same way, but there were stipulations in place that kept black all black owners of various medias, etc., from getting in on the money train.
So
And
I
he
have to
did that and
interrupt
went
you now,
forward
Miss
that.
Sims, because you just go on for a little minute. So
Yes,
I
because I know what
actually
I
it,
know what I'm talking about in
No,
regards to what
you
I
don't.
saw
Not,
and
not,
no,
not
heard.
when
you
it
don't.
comes to
You
Byron
really
What I
don't.
Allen.
saw
No,
and
you
You
do
heard.
don't.
not. No,
Okay,
you
so
do not.
between the
Have you
years
all
of
looked at
hello,
those at the Civil Rights Act and the act that I'm talking
Have you
about
have
right
you
hello.
now?
looked at Byron Allen since 1989 when MTV came on? No.
No,
Thank you.
I haven't. I
Yeah, so
did. I said I
you can't
So
speak
you
to
can
what
only
and I
he's
speak to what
said
saying.
he's talked of in the
whatever
last
way,
4 years.
he was making money. I didn't say,
You
and it
but
sounds like it's
but
from you
but
all. It was
you
various means, but
you
whatever
And
but
way
on
he
the
was
backs
making
of
it.
black people. Go ahead, Dr. Casey. Go ahead, Dr. Casey.
the your
Whatever way he was making
descriptions,
money.
Miss Sims, Miss Sims,
This act,
Miss Sims,
it favors
Miss
not only him
Sims,
but other people. Okay, go
Miss
ahead.
Sims.
Go ahead.
You first you say things and then you don't remember that you had just said that. So when we say that you had said it, you be like, "Well, I didn't really say that like that," and you
I
did.
I didn't
But
say it that way you
Miss
all
Sims, let me
interpreted.
finish.
No.
Let me finish, Miss Sims, because you're gonna start going, and then we ain't gonna be able to say nothing else. So,
And
first
I
and foremost, I
respect
want
you
to
for what you all say and not tear it apart and whatever. But go
Miss
on.
Sims, Miss Sims. If you tell me that I just said something and we talk about what I just said, that's not tearing what you said apart. That's not tearing what I said apart. That is telling me what I said so we could talk about what I just said. You're playing the victim right now, but we're going to move off of that for a
No,
second.
it might not be what
Miss
I
Sims,
said, but I believe that's what you heard.
Miss Sims,
Yes.
can you give me a minute,
Yes, I will.
please?
Respectfully. And
Because
I will respectfully be quiet. Okay. Because I could learn something.
Miss
Okay.
Sims, but you still haven't. So first,
You're fading in and out. Okay, but go ahead. Go ahead. I can hear you now. Go ahead. You were fading in and out. Your sound.
I was just waiting for you to finish. So, um, first and foremost, the way that you are repeating the things that he said that he did, for his benefit or for whatever you're saying that he was talking about it, whatever interview, you're only quoting what he's saying with a little bit of research or
Mm-hmm.
insight on the actual factuals. It's like believing a politician that say, "Well, I did all of these things." You believe Trump when he said he made all these changes in the world and he ain't goddamn did shit. He ain't did a damn thing. But you based on what you're saying about Mr. Allen, just because he said it, that's what you're gonna go off of. But we're gonna screw all of that over, and then I'm gonna go to this. So, in about 2013 through about 2015, I spent a lot of time doing a lot of research, and some of the things that I researched was the FCC and how channels and the networks are managed and the way that it is handled because you can't just go and buy a network. You have to wait for someone to be available. It's a lot of trickery and it kind of
Mm-hmm.
like the redlining involved
Yep.
with
You got to know the game. Yep.
Sims. Be shh.
You interrupt me all along the way, but go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
because you know why? Because once you start talking, can't nobody else talk for about 10 or 15 minutes. So then when you stop talking and then somebody else start talking, then you start talking again over them. You've been doing it for the last couple of weeks. I ain't saying nothing because it's not my show. It's not my place to really say nothing, but I'm addressing it now because you just won't let me finish. So in addition to that, I researched the FCC. I researched about radio stations. I researched about TV networks because I wanted to own a TV network. That's kind of how Speaking Freedom TV kind of rolled out, but I was trying to see how to make it into an actual network. And I realized, and I really put out all of this information on my Instagram was for just giving information to people. I know a lot of celebrities. There's a lot of celebrities know me through different connections and or social media. So I gave a lot of information. Even the Hollywood Walk of Fame, I started telling people, okay, this is how you get a star on the Walk of Fame. So when you see everybody getting these stars, a lot of people didn't know that you just had to go and petition to get a Hollywood a star and pay a fee and do these little simple things to get these things done. So now what you see is you see people exercising a lot of things that they didn't know how to enter into to begin with because there was oftentimes not a place for us because when and the way that it was started, it's almost started like a storehouse of sorts. And they only made enough for what they wanted, and they made enough for what they wanted, and they only make space for what they want. So in order to actually get into that system based on again between 2013 and 2015. Now it could have changed between now and then, and it is always evolving because you have technology that kind of negates needing to have a FCC approved network. But all of those things kind of started growing and coming about um, after that period of time. But a lot of those things you have to um, bid and be in a position to buy something that already exists. They don't let you start one and put it on in. You have to start all from where Revolt TV came from them buying a network. So in order to get into TV now, literally you can't just it's like Radio 1. All of these radio stations are pretty much owned by one or two, maybe three groups of people, and you have to wait for them to sell off those syndicated networks in order to pick one up.
Mr. Scott, what did you think about Byron Allen, the whole move to buy an NFL team? And as we spoke, uh, I mean, without and I might be kind of going excluding Miss Sims and Dr. Casey, but as these owners of these sports teams are billionaires. We don't have a black billionaire that can go to a bank and borrow whatever he needs, whatever he needed to complete this $44 billion deal that Elon
Not that
Musk
much.
just
Yeah.
acquired.
Yeah.
But as we spoke, a couple weeks ago, we can't even find with all of our black wealth, we cannot find a black group that is powerful enough or syndicated enough to own a sports entity of our own.
Well, what about Ice Cube's league? He started his own league.
No, no, no. Now I got to take you back. Go back to 3 on 3. 3 on 3 is owned and operated by Ice Cube, but they also have some minority stockholders, which actually enabled him to get the talks in order for him to get the contract with ESPN.
I mean, you got to that's the part of the game that you got to
Of
play though. You,
course,
you
of course. The trick is that Ice Cube is the majority owner.
mhm.
Will Byron Allen be the majority owner, or will he be the minority majority owner?
Well, that's the key on the whole thing. I mean, puppetry. I mean, it's like here at the Minnesota Timberwolves, they say Alex Rodriguez, the former baseball player, he's going to be one of the new owners. Him and another guy who obviously the other guy is the one that got the money. He's
Right,
just going to be the
but
face.
every night they show Alex Rodriguez,
Every night
the
they
new
show
owner.
him at the thing. He's going to be the owner. And see, this is the thing. It's the puppets. You can almost see their mouth move. But they're like a puppet. That's we can't. It's a money game. My dad would sit me down and say, Anthony, don't let nobody fool you. The name of this game is money, and so they know that. This is why we can't. Our housing here is in disparities. Why? Who has $400,000, $350,000 to just buy an average house now? Who has? And so this is so they have used an economic game on us now to keep us from participating. So when we had the Negro leagues, and these brothers, they not only own their team, they own the stadiums. They built stadiums to play their teams in. But they said no, we can't have competition. See, that's their business model. They don't want no competition. See, they want to have the whole 9 yards. You can work for us. You can work for us. We'll put you up to it. We'll make you this. But we are the ones that pull the strings. And that's how do we get beyond that? Well, it's short. Don't if we had the money, we could do it.
Okay, now, respectfully, Dr. Casey, as you describe how my actions in being rude and overtaking people's conversation, it was like you were describing your own actions. And if you go back and look at the tapes, you see I tried to be respectful for everybody, but where I was, and I haven't put Byron Ireland on a pedestal or kissing his ass. I was speaking to the money trail and political aspects of that, and how it has opened up, hopefully, for black owners in whatever medium they want to rise as, and hopefully the new revitalization of that act will enable that if it's enforced to go forward, and that's hopeful to me. I don't know anything about the man's background, where is he coming from, who he screwed over, who he hasn't. I was listening at the money trail and political aspect and meaning for what was going on. And I was glad that politicians got involved and made and revitalized this act to make it work for black folk.
But Miss Sims, have you heard anything that any of the three of us have said?
Yes,
Have
No,
you heard anything? Okay, so
yes,
the
and
three,
I have, and what she, and
three of
what she
us,
just,
the
and
three of
let me
us have
answer.
just told you. Wait a minute. The three of us have just told you for the last 45 minutes that this man and this act is a puppet. Even Mr. Scott just said the
Even,
man's mouth don't
even.
move. Well,
I didn't deny it. I didn't deny it.
you,
I can't deny it. I don't
you
know.
just did. You just did. You just said that this act is something that is good and for the benefit of black people. And we have just told you that this man is a puppet for white folks.
I'm speaking to the act being a tool for other black folk.
Okay.
He could drop dead and go off the ends of the earth. I feel, my condolences. I'm talking about what Mr. Casey just talked about, Ice Cube owning certain things, and the things that she went through in regards to the FCC, et cetera, et cetera. I listened and heard other people speak to that and things that was going on. So I knew that aspect of it. I haven't researched it like she does. She's a good researcher. extensively and whatever, but I did hear other aspects of what was going on. And like I said, I don't put anybody on a pedestal, especially politics. Nobody belongs on a pedestal but a vase or something. And I'm not kissing his ass. I'm not an ass kicker, kisser for one thing, but I
Who
am
said
listening
that?
to you all.
Nobody said that you kissed nobody ass. We just said that you going off of what he said versus actually knowing the facts. And you sound quite offended over there. You sound like you might be in your feelings a little bit.
Offended? I go back and listen to these shows afterwards to see, sometimes when I'm saying things and how you all hearing them and interpret it. First, I look at myself. Well, what did I say? How did I say it a certain way or this and that? So I go back and critique myself, and I just went back to the bottom line, what I was interested in regard to, however, whoever played this
Well,
out in
well,
terms of the
that,
fairness of it in
that
regards
was
to
why
moving forward.
that was why I asked you, like to go back and research Byron Allen,
And
and
I
then
will, and I will.
okay,
Out of you got my curiosity. I had moved on, but I will moved on from him or whatever. But I will go back, and
yeah,
I wrote his name down in
and
my notes here.
okay, and I want you to tell me three things, just three things that you think that Byron Allen's actions did to benefit the expansion of Black people within the broadcast community. That's all, just three. Um, but
Repeat it again, so I make sure I heard it correctly. Expense of
three,
Black people.
no, three things that
Right.
Byron Allen's actions have done to promote the success of Black people within the broadcasting industry, or you can even put it the sports industry if you want to make it even broader than that. But within the broadcasting, because that includes MTV and everything that he's done up to including acquiring the Weather Channel.
I'll do that. I wrote it down here, but he always struck me. He's looking out for his own self interest, so I might not find anything.
No, that's precisely what you'll find out, is that he's looking for his own self-interest. That's what I'm trying to get.
Very clear. It came across me very clear. I mean, he didn't go out champion the cause for Black folk. He was looking out for his self-interest, and other people trying to do. But I will, out of respect for what you're saying, and everybody here, I have written it down. As you see me turn to the side and do like this, I'm writing, taking notes.
Ms. Sims, why don't you give us your final thoughts for the evening and tell us, tell everybody where they can find any social media. Are you still involved with the light rail thing? What's going on over there? Any special elections? What's happening?
Yeah, the light rail thing it's still going on, and I'm dealing with that in various capacities, dealing with the Met Council, Hennepin County, the Metropolitan Pollution Control, the EPA, and things along those lines. But one of the things I wanted to do in closing out, James, I wrote down, and I guess I want people to know that more.
Adjust your volume, Miss Sims.
I'm sorry. Now, can you hear me better?
Yes,
Better?
yes.
Okay. I want people to know that, yes, the good, the bad, and the ugly people and their actions come out of Minneapolis. But I wanted to give a note on some of the good that comes out of Minneapolis, and that's certain people. And I meant to do this during Black History Week, but I got ill and stuff. But anyway, I listen. I'll be very fast. One is Howard Womack. He got me started into. Was a great influence on my becoming a faith-based organizer. Vivian Jenkins Nelson. She's a female. She owns her own. She's owner president, CEO of her own counseling business, and she also was the first black legal women voter president in Minnesota, and the second black president nationally in the League of Women Voters. She worked with also, and I work with her too, but she worked with two black veterans here in Minnesota uh, that from the Vietnam War uh, that that was commissioned by the VA director to do outreach and set up meetings to find out why black veterans, especially all veterans, were not taking advantage of their benefits. And then she also was in the civil rights era with her message, violence, whatever. Then there's Ron Womack. He went to Syracuse University in the early 1970s. He was part of the 8 or 9 football players that boycotted football during that time, Ben Schwartzwelder's time, and they were kicked off the team, and they took it to court. And a little bit later, they won. But if they had not, they had mentors that helped them during that time there, or if they would have lost their scholarships or whatever, they did lose their hopes and dreams to be going to the into the pro. And then his Minnesota connection. He lives in Minneapolis, and he also taught for 30 some years in the St. Paul public school system in educational psychology. One more person I'll just say, Ben Mackay, and he's a black person that every day, single day, he puts out something that black folk did or were famous for that day, and other
I
black
grew up with Benji. He's one of my
yeah,
childhood friends.
did you? Okay, there. And last but not least, for now, I'll put down Anthony Scott for for his being
And
in there
I'm
and
the
his
best
book
in
and
here.
things.
That's right.
And the end.
Mr. Scott, I hear your speaking engagements are going well. Things are going very well as far as the new publication out, a new printing, is it?
Yeah.
So why don't you give us your final thoughts for the evening?
Well,
And
we're
Dr.
we're, we're
Casey, you
working
can
on
take
some
us
new
home.
things, but basically up here in the Twin Cities, especially in South Minneapolis where I live half mile from the George Floyd situation, and people have come and shut that street down. They got people that are just there, call themselves policing it. So I'm attending a meeting online tomorrow with the mayor, with Andrea Jenkins, who is our what is she
Police
on the
chief?
city council? Will be president of the
President of
city
City
council.
Council. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to give them a piece of my mind. I'm going to be on this thing. And they had one in person last week, but see, they wouldn't tell me about that. See, they didn't want me there for that. But I'm going to be online with this thing tomorrow. And then I'm going to tell them to open that doggone street back up. Let's get these buses running back through there. Let's get these businesses going back in that area. Let's close that Cup Foods. I mean, it's over with. I mean, Chauvin's in jail where he belongs. The other ones is getting ready to go to jail. So let's get back to business here. We can't continue to dwell on this. I mean, that's an unfortunate thing. The
Are they
people
trying
have
to make it
Desmond is in
a
jail where he's
memorial
supposed
or
to
something?
be.
Are they trying to make it a memorial or something? I'm sorry for
Well,
interrupting, but
they're trying. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they
okay.
want to do. They've lit renegade people, close the gas station, close the restaurants, tell you
Okay.
can't come in there. This is George Floyd Square. This is a
Oh
sanctified
wow.
place. And
Wow.
they call themselves, but the police won't even go there. People go up there and buy drugs, do all kinds of stuff up there all day long. It's chaos.
Interesting.
They need to get rid of that. And so I'm going to be at that meeting tomorrow. So I'll report on that and see. I mean, fortunately, I won't be there because they probably would try to usher me out, escort me out of the building. But I'm going to be online tomorrow.
Mr. Scott,
Well,
I want to ask you one thing. Has there been any type of neighborhood interaction with these people, or are they just people protesting online and
They avoid it. Yeah, they avoid the confrontation with. Like I said, they had a meeting at the park last week. My brother told me about it. He said he found out about it after the fact. So I called down to Jacob Fry's office today, and I said somebody's going to call me back and let me know when the next meeting is. Well, it's going to be online, and they just sent me a link for it tomorrow. So,
Hmm.
but no, they avoid community involvement. I don't know. They just need to open the street up. We need to move past that and stop being known for this is what happens here. We need to move past it and show we can do better.
take us home, Dr. Casey. Great remarks,
Oftentimes,
Mr. Scott.
oftentimes, Mr. Scott, it is. I think we talked about this last week specifically. That they just like to point and blame instead of taking the responsibility and making the actions. It's easier to deflect than to be accountable, Miss Sims. But um, overall, I would like to say that when it comes to knowledge, it is easy to pick up your phone and search whatever search engine tickles your fancy to figure out all of the information that we talk about here. Any book, I have posted my book list several times. If you go to Speaking Freedom TV, I have actually an episode that talks about my overall book collection, which includes all of my educational books, all of the books that I just buy because they interest me. Research, get information, learn knowledge, go further than anything that I can say, go further than any research that I've done thus far. It is in your best interest to get knowledge. I am not a stickler for the Bible, but one word that I do rest on is that we are destroyed by the lack of knowledge. And I rest on that scripture simply because, as a disabled veteran, I know that there are a lot of veterans that don't get benefits. I know that a lot of veterans are disadvantaged because they don't know how to file for benefits and they will accept whatever the government tells them. And the more you learn, the less that they can withhold from you. It's a lot of loopholes. The loopholes is not something that is a law breaking thing. It's just the things that you don't know that they take advantage of you because you don't know it. So learn information, get the knowledge. Don't take nobody's word for nothing, not even mine. I don't care what you listen to, who you tap into, whatever somebody is telling you, especially before you spend money with somebody, research and see what they're talking about because people will sell you a pipe dream. People will tell you things just so that they can get the money out of your pocket. No different than when James and us talk about how preachers can be sometimes. Now, all preachers aren't bad, but there's enough of them in the bunch to where it's gonna make you start questioning what's going on and what they're doing. So question everything. Questioning things is not a bad thing. That is the only way that you are really going to get some information. That's the only way you're really going to find the answers, and that's the only way that you're really going to be free.
James, you never close out in a statement. Let's hear one from you.
Well, I try to make my statements during the show, but my statement for this evening is I go along with Dr. Casey and with Mr. Scott. Uh, please do your own research, look up things for yourself. Don't take my word for it because hey, I'll be the first one to admit I have some extremely prejudiced views, but they're mine.
Bias. Yeah, we can be very
They-
biased at times. Yeah,
Yes, yes,
extremely.
yes, they can. Yes, they can. And I've paid the dues for them to be biased, in my opinion. But therefore, I accept your opinion. The only thing like I said, I ask is that read, interpret, and if you still come up with the same conclusions, that's fine. But at least be open.
Read again.
at least just be open to information. You know, uh, like they say, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. So my thoughts are, to everyone out there that listens to our show, I welcome any feedback, and as I say, I encourage everyone to be an independent thinker.
And
Thank you,
I like
everyone.
Dr. Casey. I like the yellow, but I can't see what I want to see. So
This,
I just thought I would end with that.
see, hey, Mr.
You
Scott,
started with it
really,
and you didn't
uh,
do it. It's
yeah,
all right with me.
at least, hey, at least Twitter hasn't taken us over yet. Right now, we're still good, uh, Mr. Scott has completely taken over my role as the Chester molester of the show.
Listen,
With
first off, that is offensive. I'm more offended by you saying Chester molester than I am about
well,
the
I
well,
am offended by that.
hold
I'm offended by
okay.
that.
that's an extreme. That's an extreme claim there.
Let me explain Chester the molester, because as far as as far as me and Mr. Scott are concerned, there's a reason why we call you baby girl, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay, I'm gonna
All
let
right.
that go.
Have a good night, everyone.
Bye,
Hey,
y'all.
at least
Have a good evening.
we can have fun as well as a different opinion.
I'm still
Have a
waiting for
great
the
night, everyone.
In the
See
rap
y'all
game,
later.
we got to get to the rap game. You guys keep avoiding me with the rap game. You don't
I've
want to
been
talk
busting
about that.
rams the whole time, and you never realized.
Y'all have a good night. See you next week.
Peace and love. Good night, everyone.